Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we are going to take a look at what probably would happen and what could happen if Ainz Ooal Gown dies. And we are going to talk about everything from the reactions of his NPCs to attempts at bringing him back to what would happen if Ainz Ooal Gown stayed dead or incapacitated for longer periods of time. But before we are going to talk about all of this, let's take a look at my Patreons and thank them for supporting this channel. And I also wanna thank all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. Thanks guys. Now, with that said, we also have to keep in mind that the books have basically already answered the question, because Ainz Ooal Gown has indeed simulated his death once. This was due to mainly internal politics that had arisen during the conquest of the Holy Kingdom. And it was also a welcome pretext for Ainz to slip away from the direct interactions with Demiurge in order to conquer the demi-human region of the Abelian Hill on his very own, albeit under the guise of liberation from the demon Emperor Yaldabaoth's yoke. This accomplished two things. First and foremost, it prepared the entire Sorcerer Kingdom to continue their work, even if Ainz Ooal Gown should die for real, since everyone in the Sorcerer Kingdom was informed about the death of their king. For example, the village of Khan received the message directly from Lupus Regina Beta, and also the tributary states of the Sorcerer Kingdom, namely the Empire in general, and Jerknith in particular, was informed about the undead losing the first two letters of his status. And despite these grave news, things stayed calm and orderly, because even without Ainz Ooal Gown, nothing would really change, since Ainz usually had followed the ideas of his NPCs, and I also doubt that anyone would dare to change his orders about how the non-NPCs currently living inside the Sorcerer Kingdom would be treated. Which brings us to the first question. How would the characters and NPCs near Ainz react? And I for once believe that Ainz Ooal Gown's actual death would be kept a close secret and not widely announced. So even if some rumors would start to circulate that Ainz Ooal Gown had died, most people would just shrug them off, because the Sorcerer King had quote-unquote died before. And in order to further mitigate any impact that this would have, Pandora's actor would probably hand his role as Momon the Adventurer over to a greater doppelganger, in order to be free to impersonate Ainz Ooal Gown personally. Meanwhile, Demiurge and Albedo, who would likely be the only one knowing that Ainz Ooal Gown had perished aside from Pandora, would try to bring him back. And last time the question of how Ainz Ooal Gown is to be brought back to his unlife was the cause of a great conflict between Demiurge and Albedo. Simply speaking, Albedo wanted to bring back Ainz as quickly as possible, regardless of circumstances, while Demiurge would wanted to wait until the situation was safer, and it could be ensured that Ainz would be revived in a safe space. And since Ainz Ooal Gown still has surplus experience points left, and since he is also very close to level 101, but can't quite reach it because game rules, and since Ainz has a ring that would allow him to come back without losing much in the way of experience, and lastly, since Ainz had avarice and generosity in his possession, I doubt that Ainz would feel any lasting consequences from his death. Which brings us to his servants, since Ainz Ooal Gown has created many Death Knights and just many regular undead, as well as elder liches who ran the bureaucratic apparatus of the state. Their disappearance would hit the Sorcerer Kingdom hard. But not as hard as you might think, since Pandora's actor did also create many of the undead currently keeping the state running. So at maximum a loss of unlife of let's say 60% should occur if all undead would perish at the exact same time Ainz Ooal Gown did. But I doubt they would, simply because Rufus, the first servant of Soshana, was apparently still around and undead, making it quite unlikely that even if the creator of an undead would die, that his undead creations would also perish with him, simply because Rufus hadn't died yet. Granted, there's also the chance that Rufus is just a random undead following Surshana because he was superior, like the Orb of Death wanted to join up with Ainz Ooal Gown after it has touched his undead body. Or Surshana could have simply acquired Rufus with Control Undead. But overall, it wouldn't be as a big of a deal as you might probably think, especially if Ainz returned to unlife in mere seconds or hours. And we also have to take into account that while the Great Tomb of Nazarick can't create more guild NPCs, they can still summon mercenary NPCs that would then basically fill the role of a state bureaucrat. However, if Ainz Ooal Gown would stay dead longer, let's say all dragons join forces to cast a curse, preventing the return of Ainz for at least another 100 years, then the Sorcerer Kingdom would still carry on, mostly unchanged. But still Albedo, Pandora's Actor and Demiurge would likely try to either carry out any last orders Ainz had given, aka conquer the world, or turn their attention inwards and build up an even stronger defense until Ainz Ooal Gown had returned and then could direct and lead them once more. And I would personally say that the isolationist option would be by far the more dangerous one, since now the entire rest of the world would have 100 years to prepare for a war with Ainz and his state, and since every 100 years new players appear, it could also be that yet another guild appears, filled to the brim with powerful level 100 NPCs and items, and a player to lead them, which then would pose an actual danger to the Sorcerer Kingdom. So, to conclude this video, unless Ainz would stay dead for a substantial amount of time, little to nothing would change, and lasting impact of Ainz Ooal Gown's death would also be quite unlikely, unless of course the conflict about how Ainz Ooal Gown should be revived would lead Demiurge and Albedo to wage a civil war, but this would be very counterproductive and horrible from Ainz Ooal Gown's perspective. But since Albedo wants to have Ainz for herself alone, it can't be ruled out. So, aside from Albedo making horny decisions, not much would change. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Bedgar Yee, Ben C, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Dystopia the Second, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Oakhill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Texas Deer, The Orc War Boss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon under my next video.